Hi there, Rachel Bradley, licensed principal real estate broker in the beautiful state of Oregon. Today I wanted to talk about how a recession could potentially impact the housing market. I'm sure you've seen articles. I know I've seen a lot of articles about the potential of an upcoming recession, perhaps towards the end of 2025. Now, my immediate question, of course, always is how will that impact the housing market? And I feel like, the conversations that I have with people, they automatically think that that means home prices are going to go down, perhaps interest rates will go up, and it will be horrible for the housing market. Now, obviously, a recession is not something that is happy news, if you will, and it does have a negative impact on the unemployment rate. However, what we have seen when we look at the actual data, we can go back to the 1980s, look at the past 6 recessions, and let's just look at what the data says in regards to how a recession impacts the housing market. And actually, what we find in regards to home prices is that 4 out of the last 6 recessions, we actually saw an increase in home prices. Now, 2 of those recessions, one of them we saw a slight decrease. However, in 2008, we saw a home price depreciation, if you will, of 20%. So we had the housing market crash in 2008. But I'd like people to be aware, and that was during a recession. So a lot of people link that to the fact that we were in a recession. But the reality is that market, that housing market crash in 2008 was due in large effect to the subprime mortgages that were being given out during that time. So there's tons of information online. Just, Google subprime mortgages 2008. You'll find many, many articles. So again, lenders were giving loans to borrowers that really had no business purchasing those homes. They didn't have a high enough income. They had really high debt to income ratios. They didn't have enough cash on hand, and they were unable to maintain that mortgage payment over the long term. Now today, because of that crash in 2008, the rules and regulations have been really tightened up in regards to lending, and that is to avoid the potential of another housing crash like we had in 2008. So as you can see from the statistics, just because we're in a recession does not mean that home prices are completely going to fall out. And as a matter of fact, we've seen the opposite of that. Now, another thing that comes to mind when I think about a recession, of course, is interest rates. How will a recession impact interest rates? And actually, during recession periods, we usually see, as you can see over the past 6 recessions, we have seen a decrease in interest rates. So during recession periods, the Fed will drop those interest rates. So again, it's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people assume is going to happen. And now another point that I want to touch on that I think is really important to look at is that homeowners' equity right now is at an all-time high. So is a recession good news? Of course not. But the reality is that homeowners are holding more equity than they ever have in their homes. So perhaps it could actually be the homeowners that prevent us from going into that recession, or if we do get into recession, prevent it from escalating further because of all of the equity that homeowners are holding into their homes. So obviously this is a huge topic with many different moving parts. But my main point being, when I look at statistically at the averages, what's happened during the past 6 recessions, now 2008 again was a very special situation, caused in large part by subprime mortgages. But when we look at the other 5 recessions, we can see that home prices still seem to maintain their value. And when we look at all 6 recessions, we can see that interest rates have gone down. And the other factor that comes into play today is the reality that homeowners have more equity than they've ever had in their homes. And a lot of homeowners have just been hanging on to their properties. They haven't been moving. They've been building that equity and they're staying put. So it'll be really interesting to watch what sort of an impact that has on a recession, if that indeed is what happens in the future. So I hope that information is helpful. If you are considering buying or selling a home, please give me a call. I'd love to help, and I'm always happy to talk real estate. Happy house hunting.